Managerial accounting cost behavior. Now, the next type of cost behavior that we need to look at is that of fixed costs. Now, the definition of a fixed cost is that the total cost will stay the same regardless of changes in activity within the relevant range. Examples of a fixed cost include straight line depreciation. No matter how many units we produce during the period, our straight line depreciation is going to be the same total amount. Another example would be rent or property taxes. No matter how many units we produce during the year, our property taxes, which are not based on volume but are based on the assessed value of our property, the total of those property taxes will not change within a particular year. So again, the total will stay the same regardless of changes in activity within the relevant range. Now, if the total stays the same, then our assumption about per unit cost is not going to be the same as that with variable cost. In fact, per unit fixed costs change as activity changes. In fact, they change inversely with changes in activity. Well, what does that mean? Well, if the total is staying the same, for example, $1,000 per month, and we produce 100 units in that month, then our per unit cost is going to be $10 per unit. But if we produce 2,000 units in that month, then our per unit fixed cost is going to be 1,000 divided by 200, or $5 per unit. So the per unit cost changes inversely. If volume goes up, fixed cost per unit goes down. Now, once again, let's take a look at some dollar amounts here. Now, let's say that our total depreciation is $1,000 per month. And at 100 units per month, as we just said, our fixed cost per unit is going to be $10 per unit. Now, as long as we're within the relevant range, and let's say our relevant range for that cost being $1,000 is 500 units, from 0 to 500 units. So if we produce 200 units, well, our fixed cost is still going to be $1,000. But again, 1,000 divided by 200, our per unit cost goes down to $5 per unit. So here, production doubled, and our per unit cost went down by 1/2. So if production doubles, our per unit cost is halved, reduced by 1/2. Now, 300 was within the relevant range, so our total cost is still going to be 1,000, but this time it's not going to be cut in half, because from 200 to 300 is not 1/2. It's not doubled, rather. It's 1.5 times. So our per unit cost, 1,000 divided by 300, is going to be $3.33. So notice, the total stayed the same within the relevant range, but our per unit, because volume was increasing from 100 to 300, our per unit cost decreased from $10 per unit to $3.33. Now, if we graph this with total cost or cost on the vertical axis and activity on the horizontal axis, this is what our total fixed cost line will look like. It looks like a straight line out from the $1,000 total cost for the month. So it didn't matter whether we produced 100 or 200 or 300 or 400 in this relevant range, we were still going to incur $1,000 worth of cost. So fixed cost, the total stays the same within the relevant range, regardless of changes in activity. As activity changes, per unit fixed cost will vary inversely or will change inversely with the direction of the change in activity.